Well, I didn't know if this was ever going to happen, but Keaton's Indie Corner Episode 2. We got a couple new things to review. We have a Netflix series, American Primeval, and a new sci-fi thriller called Companion. Before we get into that, there was kind of two rants I had that I wanted to be on air on this podcast because I want to maintain logical consistency. And both of these rants will connect to the reviews and pretty much all the reviews in the past and going forward. Now, rant number one. We are kind of in like an apocalypse of trailers. They meaning Hollywood, by the way, has completely forgotten what it means to make a trailer. And it's kind of an issue because they give away so much, and it's kind of a shame. I can't pinpoint exactly when this trend started. I can remember the first one that I can recall off the top, which is early 2021. They did the trailer for No Time to Die. It's the final Craig Bond movie. And the trailer is just the entire movie. Like, I finished the trailer, I was like, okay, wow. Like, it was so shocking that they just put the entire movie in the trailer. And, it was bizarre to me then. Little did I know that that would become the case with every movie. That was the case with Flight Risk. That was the case with all sorts of stuff. And even some of the new trailers is like not going away. Now, every now and again we get a trailer that's, a normal trailer and it seems like a sweet treat. Like 28 years later, just put out one of the best trailers. But here's the thing. We're calling it that, but that's just what they should be. Like, that's just what trailers are supposed to be in the first place. So, yeah. Anyways, trailers are terrible. They're way too long. Honestly, bring back the trailers of old. And by old, I mean, like, the early 2000s. Like, when was the last time you heard a trailer that started with, "In a world"? And it was just, like, narrated, it was short, and it gained just as much interest, if not more, in movies, and got people in the doors. Just compare the box office of the early 2000s to now. Like, it's pretty obvious, and I wonder if the reason that they're doing this is because if they feel like they don't give enough of the plot away, then people won't. But I think it's the reverse, I think, is what's happening. So, anyways, the second rant. Now, this isn't really a rant. This is just kind of a point that I have a history with, which I'll get to, and that is faithfulness to source material. Source material being whether it's a novel or source material also includes real-world history. Now, there's kind of two camps, and I have been in both. Camp number one, in order for you to like something, you're hedging all of that on its faithfulness to the source material. And this is talking about adaptations. It is like an absolute must-have. Camp number two is you look at it for what it is, movie or show-wise. All of the, how is the cinematography? How is the acting? How is the writing? Did it maintain the spirit? That being said, in this camp also, accuracy and faithfulness of source material is a major pro, but it can still has the ability to be good without maintaining perfect faithfulness to source material. I started in the first camp when I was younger. The movies that put me in said camp were Aragon, if you even recall that movie. Oh my gosh. And the first Logan Lerman, Percy Jackson movie. Now, in retrospect, multiple things can be true at once. You cannot be faithful to source material and make a terrible movie. And you can also make a movie that isn't faithful to source material that is really good. You can also make a movie that's really good and super faithful to the source material, like Lord of the Rings, for instance. And that kind of path of logic is what put me in the second camp. For specific examples, I have two that come to mind, and that is Braveheart. Pretty much the only historically accurate thing about that movie is the very end. And the Count of Monte Cristo movie from 2002 with Guy Pearce, Jim Caviezel, Richard Harris. I adore both those movies, and they are not particularly faithful to the source material, but if you didn't even know that they were adaptations of something, then that wouldn't even be like a thought in your head or a reason to not like it at all, because it's just so good. They excelled in every other movie-making endeavor, because at the end of the day, that is what you're doing. But it does add points, which would be the perfect third example, Lord of the Rings. It is both good in its own right, while also heavily keeping to the letter and spirit of Tolkien, which is really nice. I would prefer if everything was option 3, but that's not the world we live in. There's a lot of logistical reasons you can't do that too, like when a movie gets adapted, especially if it's a movie rather than a show, you're gonna have to chop a lot out. And sometimes there's reasons. There's good ways you can do that. A lot of times there's not good ways. The problem comes with most people if you make changes. Again, changing stuff that happened in the source material, multiple things can be true at once. You can make it good, make it work. You can make it terrible. There's a lot of arguments to be made in the new House of Dragon show on HBO that there's stuff they did in that's actually better than the book, which is a weird anomaly. And like I referenced before, the 2002 Count of Monte Cristo, the changes they made, they're different, but it's kind of could have gone either way. They made changes to better affect the tone they were going for, because it's a very tonal shift from the book. So yeah, I just wanted to maintain logical consistency through this podcast, because you'll notice we watch stuff that's adaptations all the time. I am okay if it's not faithful, so long as in every other aspect it's good, but it is a massive help and massive benefit if it is. So the hope and the prayer is that filmmakers and showrunners do adapt stuff faithfully and have a level of respect, because it does benefit them. And I also just generally don't trust them as much anymore. Like, we haven't had a Peter Jackson type. You could bring up Dune. The second movie wasn't as faithful to the book as the first, but anyways, that's a different conversation. So those are just kind of the two things I wanted to get out of the way before reviewing these. But let's start with American Primeval. Now, this is on Netflix now. It came out earlier this month, and it is a dark, gritty Western. Quick plot synopsis, it's two different perspectives. Group of pioneers starts the show, and they're trying to get... They all have different spots that they're trying to get to. You have a young, newlywed couple. That's one perspective. It's actually technically the B plot. And then the A plot is a woman and her son are trying to get to the city that... It's not in Utah. The whole show takes place in Utah. I think they're trying to get to California, where her husband theoretically is. This train, or this group, gets attacked on the road, and very little survivors. The wife and the son get away, and then the couple, one gets severely injured and one gets kidnapped. So now the show continues on through 6 episodes. You're following both these perspectives. The mother and the son escape because they are saved by Taylor Kitsch's character. And then you have the young newlyweds trying to find each other. The girl is kidnapped and kind of held by the Shoshone, while the man is kind of recovered by the troops and by bandit groups. And they're all trying to they have their separate goals. He's trying to find his wife. Woman's trying to get to California. Tonal, like in the kind of atmosphere and theme, it's very similar to The Revenant with Leo DiCaprio. Everybody's been making that comparison. I think it's fair. Even though it's a Western, it's pretty dark. It's cloudy a lot. It's violent, like really violent. And I'm not entirely sure what the budget was, but it actually looked really good. The sets were great. The costumes were great. Overall, so that was the quick plot, but overall, I really liked it. To bring back to those first two rants, because they both apply to the reviews today. There are some historical things that they changed for the sake of the show, which, it is what it is, and I'm not saying they did as good with it as like something like Braveheart, but I thought it was okay because the things they changed weren't for major plot points. It was just kind of for side stuff and for flavor. So it was more of a plot device or a convenience, so to speak. But yeah, it all takes place in Utah, which is kind of neat, and dark, gritty, super well acted, especially by Taylor Kitsch and Jai Courtney. And the end is just heart-wrenching. I'm not going to give spoilers, obviously, but it is. You don't really expect it, but you kind of do. Anyways, so yeah, American Primeval, I give it an 8. It was a really good watch. Glad I gave it the time, despite the inaccuracies, because they were just more convenient, not super big deal. Now, the main thing I wanted to get to today was Companion. This is a sci-fi thriller. Now, I'm going to open with my issues with the trailer. The trailer gives away like a really major plot point. Even the poster does. But in the movie, they spend the first 15 to 20 minutes kind of hiding said plot point in order to do a reveal. But it's like, okay, did you know you were going to market it the way that you did? Because otherwise there's kind of no point in spending the time to set up a reveal if the reveal is discussed ad nauseum in the marketing. So I don't know if they meant to do that. My guess would be they didn't. You could have definitely made a trailer for this movie without giving away that main said plot point. So technically this review isn't a spoiler review because, well, they frickin' put it in the trailer for some reason. So, quick synopsis. This group of couples is meeting at a lakeside cabin for a vacation. Now, you find out in the trailers, which, if they marketed this correctly, that would be the end of my synopsis. But the main girl, so Jack Quaid's girlfriend, you find out is a robot, and it is explained that the robots in this reality are kind of like emotional support animals in real life, but they're robots. So you have an app on your phone, you can kind of create your emotional support robot to do whatever you want. Because it's an app, you can program them, you can like change their intelligence, whatever. And so, well, humans out in the woods with robots, things don't go swimmingly, right? You have to have a movie, something has to happen, stuff does happen. So that is the quick synopsis. And, for a January release, I didn't really know what to expect. And the trailers kind of made it seem like a horror. So if you saw the trailers, it's not a horror movie. Which was kind of a pleasant surprise. I wasn't super in the mood for a horror, but it looked good in the trailers. It was interesting, and I really like Jack Quaid. But actually, it's kind of just like a thriller. It's just a sci-fi thriller with this very interesting and cool premise. And not really knowing what to expect technically made it a surprise. It was actually kind of awesome. I'm still kind of processing it because I saw it today, and it came out today at time of recording. But it was really fun. Now, is it like a spectacle? No. And that's okay. In fact, there are a couple things I appreciated about this movie that I want to get to. Number one, the runtime. This is like 85 minutes. Super easy to get through, which I super appreciate given the genre. Like when you make a thriller, but then you drag it, it can be kind of annoying, depending on what it is. If it's super well written, like if it's David Fincher, obviously that's fine. But, a tight runtime is very appreciated. So I'm grateful for that. And thing that I appreciate, number 2, is it didn't take itself too seriously. There were actually like a good sprinkling of funny bits, but they fit. Because it's like, okay, in this world, humans have access to emotional robots that have like super advanced AI. They're pretty much people. But if you get too carried away, or if you want to change something, you just whip out your phone. But you treat them like a human. Like, it's a crazy thing in premise. So, some of the characters even, like, realize that this is kind of wild. But, at the end of the day, they're not real, but we are. So, yeah. It doesn't take itself super seriously, but in some bits, and then the last third of the movie, it's just pedal to the metal. And with this really cool premise, I am happy to report it was executed rather well. I had a lot of fun. It's wild. Like, it's crazy, okay? It's not like a slasher as far as gore by any means. It gets bloody, for sure. But it's not, Terrifier. It's not going to make you throw up. Really well acted. The character arcs are written out pretty good. Primarily the leads, which, forgive me, I forget the actress's name, but then her and Jack Quaid, especially those two. And yeah, it's a lot of fun. I would say overall, I'd give it like a 7.5. Fun ride, not too long. I think, and I wish that they marketed it differently, because I think people would have had more fun going into it completely blind. So, if you've never heard of Companion, and you're interested in this premise, I'd say, yeah, give it a watch. It's a lot of fun. I will probably get it when it comes out, which I rarely do with movies these days. There's movies now and again that I'll snag the Blu-ray, but I think I only did it with 3 or 4 movies last year, but I think I'm going to get this. It was really fun. So, yeah. I didn't know that there was going to be a second installment of the Indie Corner, but I think I had a good time. It was fun. I gotta get guests on here at some point. Hearing myself is kind of annoying, but oh well. So, yeah. Go check both of those out. I'm glad we had good things to review today, and hopefully I'll see you at installment 3.